welcome back for the second part of this Loudmouth Louis. In the first part of the story, we met poor Louis and how he finds it hard not talking, and his teacher's getting a little bit frustrated with him. And he talked so much when they were organising the school fete, he'd got nothing to do apart from tell his teacher that he'd got a great idea. So then he had to come up with one, and everyone helped him, remember? And he came up with the idea of a sponsored silence. But just like with any challenge, you need to do some training. And in the last reading, his training wasn't going very well. I think he was up to 46 seconds at best in silence. Now, he's got a new manager, if you remember rightly. It's Mum to the rescue. And I wonder if she's going to be using sellotape over his mouth to help him. Chapter 7, sponsorship. The first thing we did was go after sponsorship, and I made out this form. May Todd, 20p per hour, maximum £1.50. Brian Todd, 20p per hour, maximum £1.50. Mrs Havergill, £10p per hour, maximum amount £1. In the first column you wrote your name. Next you wrote how much you wanted to pay for each hour. I kept quiet. At the end you had to write the most amount of money you ever give. I never spoke again. That's only fair, said Mum. After all, you might have a terrible fright and be struck dumb forever. No such luck, Dad said. First I went round to see Mrs Havergill next door just for practice. Please, Mrs Havergill, will you sponsor me to keep quiet all day Friday? How much is it? She said. You get to choose. She looked me up and down. 10 pence an hour and £1 maximum. What a pity you're not doing it on Saturday. She wrote her name down and went to see Mum. It works. Only if you keep quiet, she said. But we'll leave that problem one step at a time. Next, I took the form into school and everyone was thrilled. Mrs Sparks put herself down for 50p an hour. Cheap at double the price, she said. Her eyes gleamed. And if it works, we'll do it again and again and again. We could have a new music centre, a sports stadium. You could be quiet every day in my class until the end of term. I gave her my hurt look. All right, we'll just see how it goes on Friday, shall we? Snatching the form from me, she signed her name. All of my friends signed up. I hadn't realised how many people I've been bothering. Does this mean you'll all be quiet through reading time? If you will, I'll pay. When you keep interrupting reading and never get to the story, that really annoys me. Is there any chance you'll be able to keep quiet through maths workbook? Then I might get to understand subtraction, and that'd be brilliant. How much is it to sponsor you through gym class? Then we might get to use the ropes for once. I love it when everyone's quiet and we get to use the ropes. I'll pay if you promise to be extra quiet through pictures from history. I love pictures from history, but when you're talking, I can't hear. The dinner ladies laughed. Loudmouth Louis? Stay quiet for 1 hour? 1 whole hour? I'm only for the whole day. Both of them laughed at once. I should warn you, I'm under new management, so it could happen. And Leighton Buzz and Wanderers could win the cup, love. They fell about laughing some more. Then Mrs James put out her hand. Give me the form and I'll sign up. And she did. And I looked to see what they'd written. £100,000 an hour. Mrs James had written maximum £500,000. Mrs Patel had written ditto underneath. And off they went, laughing. How rude. Then I went after Mrs Heap, who was striding down the corridor. Please will you sponsor me for the new library? Sponsor you to do what, Louis? Keep quiet. She stopped in her tracks. What? No talking? For a whole hour? Oh no, for a whole day if I can. Oh, she laid her hand on my forehead. Are you got a fever? No, I'm determined. I'm under new management. I'm like Leighton Buzzard Wanderers and I shall do it. She seized the form. If you can keep quiet for a whole school day, I shall be very tempted to put a plaque up to commemorate the occasion. A real plaque? Excellent. What would it say? She tilted her head. If you're going to make a lot of money, how about silence was golden? I whistled through my teeth. Magic! Mrs Key gave me a beady look. Magic, and that's what you're going to need to get through a whole day without talking. Next stop, Mr Hambleton. Sponsor me please for shutting up. Shutting up? The same light gleamed in his eyes, as did Mrs Sparks. What, all through percussion band? I would, except that percussion isn't till next Monday and I'm doing it on Friday. I'll get the timetable changed. I'll go after Mrs Heap right now. This is an opportunity not to be missed. He snatched the form, signed it madly and ran off. A whole percussion band without you talking. Oh, I can hardly wait. Roll on Friday. Well, I never thought people would be so delighted. Oh, and then I'd got a sudden moment of doubt. Supposing I couldn't do it. No, I said to myself sternly. Come on, Louis. You've been like Leighton Buzzard Wanderers, onwards and upwards. And I strolled off, whistling to myself. When I got home, I added it all up. If I do 8:15 to 3:15, that's going to be 7 hours. Mum, check my working out. And if everyone pays me everything they've said, I'll have 10 million. Do you think we should leave dinner ladies out of it now? I'll take them out of it then, Mum. And there it was, the answer. That's amazing. With that amount, Mrs. Heath could buy a whole new floor to ceiling bookcase and fill it with books, couldn't she? Mum tapped her pencil. Yes, but you've got to manage 7 whole hours. Chapter 8, Fresh Start, Fresh Colours. When Friday came, like Leighton Buzzard Wanderers, when they made their fresh start, I wore fresh colours. Gran found me a bright yellow shirt to remind me that silence is golden, and round the cuff she embroidered, "Shh! There to remind you." And then I got the pep talk. I am listening. No, this is our strategy for the day, for you to listen. Listen? Yes, it's a defensive tack. If you're busy listening, then you won't get bored and start talking, and you'll find out what goes on, and you'll not be interrupting all the time. It'll be interesting. Interesting. Yes, think about it. You'll be like a fly on the wall. The more I thought about it, the stranger it sounded. Fly on the wall? That's right. Remember, if you talk, then it won't work. Things will just go back to how they normally are. Like when Leighton Buzzard Wanderers ended up in the 4th Division. Just like that. Not talking, listening. That's the spirit. Now go on, Louis, out there. Win, win, win. Chapter 9, Interesting. First stop, the lollipop crossing. As I walked closer, Mrs. Freer was reaching out to pull Bernie Henderson back from the curb as usual. On any other morning, I began to chat to her about something. Instead, I lagged behind in case she'd forgotten if it was a special day and asked me if the cat had got my tongue. So she had time for once to speak to Bernie. Young man, you practically hurl yourself at that pavement every day. Do you know that for every girl age who has a road accident, 7 boys get run over? 7? Bernie looked quite shocked and stepped right back. That's right, said Mrs. Fryer. And doesn't that show that charging off the curb is not a good idea? She stepped out into the next gap to stop all the traffic, and this time Bernie waited until she gave him the wink before he came over. Mrs. Fryer said as I walked past, "Hello, Louis, I didn't notice you there in that bright shirt." Fly on the wall. I gave her the thumbs up to show her I was listening. Oh, right, sponsored silence. Best of luck. But Bernie interrupted just in time. 7 boys run over for every girl. Makes you think. So that was my first few minutes. I'd heard something interesting from Mrs. Fryer and probably saved Brian Henderson's life. It was the same time in the playground. I kept hearing fascinating things. So Moira's mother had to go away and meet the Queen and wear a fancy hat. And when my brother looked at the apple, there was a maggot waving. Oh, each year top class get to go to Alton Towers. Mrs. Prendergast saw a ghost in her closet. I wandered round listening. It was fascinating. I drifted back to the playground and heard Roberta say to Amelia, "My dance teacher says if I can't learn to curtsy properly, I can't be one of the 12 dancing princesses in our show." "Is curtsying hard?" asked Amelia. "I think so. I get my feet all mixed up and I never know where to start." I grabbed her hand and tugged. She gave me a funny look and said, "What's the matter, Louis?" I put my fingers on my lips and I shook my head, but I kept on tugging. "He's doing a sponsored silence." So Roberta let me drag her behind the shed and Amelia followed us. And there she saw Dora curtsying beautifully to the dustbins. Roberta rushed up to copy. She put her feet, Amelia joined in as well. And when I walked away, the 3 of them were busy making arrangements to meet in break time for another practice. And then the bell rang. When we were trooping in for assembly, Roberta gave my hand a secret squeeze. "Louis, if I get to be one of the 12 dancing princesses, I'm going to give you my granny's old Read Easy magnifying glass, and that's a promise." A Read Easy magnifying glass. A great day. Usually I hate assembly. The hall's cold, I hate sitting still in boring lines, and it seems to go on forever. The only part I like is the singing. By the time we get onto that, it's dragged on so long, we've only got time to sing 1 or 2 verses. This time it was over too soon. I don't know what happened. One minute Mrs. Heath was nattering on about and dropping litter and noise in the corridor, but because I couldn't turn to the person next to me and whisper, I had to stare around quietly. That's how I came to notice the second hand on the clock. I watched it sweep round. When it reached the exact top, I shut my eyes and tried to guess how long a minute was. When I opened my eyes again, thinking I'd see the second hand swooping past, it was only halfway round. This time I was better when I guessed again. The next guess was even closer. I missed just by 5 seconds. Then I tried counting. First I did a minute's test run, watching the clock and getting the rhythm right. After all, being able to count a minute without a watch might come in useful if I ever joined in the army or a television company. Then after my test run, I had another test with my eyes closed. Spot on. Perfect. So I did it again to prove it wasn't a fluke. This time I was only 1 second out. And then, even though I wasn't listening, I heard my name called out by Mrs. Heap. Louis Todd! I looked up, furious. I'd not said a single word. But then I heard the rest. Can sing along the song with the rest of us without spoiling his big silence. Mrs. Heap waved at Mr. Hambleton and the piano. And since I haven't had to stop this assembly to tell people off, was she looking at me? Today we have to sing every verse. Excellent. And Mr. Hambleton picked a song that he knew was my favourite. Curious. I'm not used to sitting quietly through work time. I kept on nearly cracking. In the end, I pretended I'd forgotten what Dad said and borrowed Bethany's sticky tape. Mrs. Sparks pretended not to see me putting it over my mouth, and we got on with Matt's workbook. I couldn't talk, so I was forced to listen. I can't do subtraction, Bethany was wailing. Easy peasy, said Lyle. I'm stuck. Lyle leaned over Bethany's workbook. You're not stuck, you just have to borrow. I hate borrowing, Bethany grumbled. I was getting it wrong when I pay it back. I was about to tell Bethany about the time I got 20 wrong, but the sticky tape stopped me, so I just had to listen to Lyle explain things. Have you got it now? Nearly, just tell me one more time. This brilliant illustration there of Louis there with the sellotape on his mouth. And I can tell you now, there's never been a point that we've ever wanted to stick sellotape over one of your mouths. Well, nearly never. Now do you understand? Just tell me the bit about playing it back one more time. So Lyle said it again. I nearly peeled off my sticky tape to tell him to shush, but I didn't. And Mrs. Sparks came and stood over us. Bethany got every single one of them right, and so did I. After that was reading time. Miss Sparks picked a story about a ghost. Usually we read in groups and I'm on the blue table, but on the day of my big silence, she brought a pile of cushions and books and said we'd be reading in turns around the whole class, except for Louis because he can't talk. So he's going to have the ghost part in which he says, "Woo!" And then when my next part came, all I got to say was, "Woo!" That was very good, Miss Sparks said. Everyone's reading was excellent and Louis' wailing was particularly good. This listening business is very clever. While we were standing in the queue, I was the only one who wasn't talking. So I was the only one who got to hear that funny sizzling noise. I turned around. A new tray of macaroni cheese, fresh from the oven, bubbling and hot. Susie pushed me forward. She was busy chattering to Francis. I looked at the cold, claggy yellow stuff. I made the mistake of saying, "After you." Nearly, but stopped just in time. "Keep the queue moving, girls. Walk round, Louis, and I'll serve you." They didn't realise. I saw those last 2 claggy portions and I nearly clapped my hands. "I'm giving you a big one," Mrs. Patel said, "because you're doing so well." That's another thing I wouldn't have heard if I'd have been talking as usual. After lunch, it was percussion band. Mr. Hambleton came in with a tape recorder looking horribly worried. Nodding at me, he asked the others, "How's he doing?" "Brilliantly, he hasn't said a word." Mr. Hambleton beamed. "Oh, joy. I've been chewing my nails all morning. I even tried to get Mrs. Heap to let me have you straight answer so I could get the best of him. Now that I understand..." "Oh, she said not one of you could afford to miss Math's workbook." "I could next week," said Bethany, "because I've got subtraction sorted now." "Quick, before Louis cracks." Then he turned to me. "I'm going to hand out the castanets. Don't speak, just say what you'd like today to play without saying a word." I said all the things I love the best: the glockenspiel, the chiming bells, the marambas, the cymbals, the timpani drum. I picked the chiming bells. When we were all set up, Mr. Hambleton stood by the tape recorder and he made a speech. "This is a very special day for me. As you know, I love music. It's my greatest joy. So it's been a strain and a misery to have it ruined every single week by constant chattering and interruption. If I'd not been on sponsored silence, I would have spoken up at this point. But I was, so I didn't. But today..." Mr. Hambleton's eyes shone and his voice wobbled. He couldn't carry on. He was too moved. I felt a bit nervous. I was pointing when he was looking at me and when it was my turn. You've got to be an idiot to get it wrong when he sweeps you in or not listening. We played surf song and bell time, ghost walk, rock. Then we swapped instruments. I chose the cymbals this time. We did circus and twilight. "Oh, this is wonderful," said Mr. Hambleton. "We've got time to record on the other side." So we did Dem Bones, Punch and Judy and Lullaby. The tape rang out and the bell rang. Oh, Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Louis. Caleb poked me in the rib and said, that's interesting. Today, Mr. Hambleton's finding it even harder to keep quiet than you are. There he is there. Look how excited he is. A bit like our very own Mrs. Hayward. Then it was time to go and watch pictures from history. I sat next to Jeff, since he was sponsoring me particularly to shut up through that. We chose chairs in the middle of the front row and I was really glad because pictures from history was amazing. They showed a film about a pretty girl who emptied her slops out of an attic window on the Lord Mayor and ended up marrying him. Then they showed us the potty museum. Honestly. And the curator of the museum showed us his favourite potty. It ended with some plinky music and pictures of loos through the ages. I turned to Jeff and I nearly said, whoa, that was amazing. But the sellotape on my mouth saved me just in time. On the way to the gym, I had a think. I'll tell you what was on my mind. I knew that if anyone else had been trying to keep quiet for a whole day, people would have been trying to trick them into forgetting. Not spitefully, just for fun. But no one was doing that. In fact, they were trying to help me. If they passed me notes in class, they wrote shh on the top in case I forgot. Hey, Louis. No one said that in the playground, hoping I'd swing round and forget. And I thought I knew why. It's because they wanted me to do it. They wanted me to get through the day without talking as much as I did. Not just because my friends, because they were enjoying it. It was a nice change to have lessons without having to stop all the time for someone saying, will someone tell Louis to stop? I'm not carrying on until Louis stops talking. And that made me think. We didn't get to climb the ropes in gym, but it wasn't my fault. Mrs. Hunter wasn't in the mood. She planned a ball game and wasn't going to change it. Not for anyone. Not even for someone so quiet they heard a whisper. Louis, quick, no one's marking me. Throw the ball this way. So quiet we heard Wayne say, this is brilliant. Louis gaining us more points today than he's losing us from talking. Our team's going to win. So quiet that when the bell rang they heard Mrs. Hunter promise, if you're all good next week we will have the ropes out. I promise. Back in the classroom before going home time we did a bit more work. But then Mrs. Sparks stopped us early. See this? She said, rooting in her bag. Usually by now I'm looking for my aspirins, but today I'm looking for peppermints. Everyone got one, not just me. Don't say thank you, she warned. Just keep going until 3:15 and that will be 7 whole hours. I could hardly believe it. They clapped me out like Leighton Buzzard Wanderers the day they went up in the league. Dora, Roberta and Amelia all curtsied to me beautifully as I walked by. The dinner ladies banged their saucepan lids as I was standing on the steps, browsing through the library plaque catalogues. We must do this again very soon, they said hopefully. At the curb, Bernie Henderson stood well back while Mrs. Fryer stopped the traffic. She raised her lollipop in salute as I walked past. Mrs. Havergill handed a rose to me over the garden wall as I walked up the path. You might think about keeping going through the weekend, she suggested. And Gran was waiting at the door. Well, she said, that golden hasn't stood up very well to a long day in school. It looks quite grubby. I think I'm going to have to whip it off you and put it in the wash and... I wasn't even listening. I was counting the second hand round to the end of the very last minute. I could have done it with my eyes closed, but it was important to be sure. 3, 2, 1, yes! And then I spoke. I did it! It was brilliant. I had a great day. It was wonderful. I got to play the chiming bells and I understood borrowing properly. We read a ghost story the whole way through and we saw an amazing film about potties and... The phone rang. It was Mum. How did it go? Amazing. I saved Bernie Henderson's life. I fixed things so that Roberta got a part in the dancing show. We sang my favourite song in assembly and I learnt to count for a minute without watching. The door flew open. It was Dad, home from school early. How did it go? Superb. I found out next year we're going to go to Alton Towers. Lunch was the best ever. Our team won at football. Mrs. Sparks gave me a peppermint and I've made millions for the library. Millions. Dad looked a bit wistful. We need a new library too, he said. You wouldn't think about coming home to be quiet for another time? No, I wouldn't. But I do think I might spend a bit more time being quiet on my own. Chapter 10, Fly on the Wall. And so I have. Not terribly quiet, not all of the time, but just enough. Everyone's happier. They all paid up, except for the dinner ladies who tried to pretend that their noughts and crosses were just fancy decoration. But to make up, they have lent Mr. Hambleton a bit of serving counter for tapes of the percussion band, and sales of that are going really well, so we'll probably get 10 million without them. And the new library's open. People still go around boasting about how they raise money for it, washing cars or making biscuits or having wet sponges thrown at them. Even Miss Sparks is still bragging about making 5 whole pounds by auctioning the timer that never worked on me. What made you change anyway, she asks. But I won't say, I won't give any clues. That's the spirit, said Mum. Be like Leighton Buzzard Wanderers and keep your secrets. But sometimes, just sometimes, I see Miss Sparks grinning at me, watching like a fly on the wall, and I wonder if she guesses. Nobody calls me Loudmouth anymore. Not that I'm totally silent. I still talk more than most, but hardly ever in class when we're trying to get work done. Never in percussion band, except between pieces. And never ever when I'm in the library, sitting next to Bernie Henderson, who, thanks to me, is still alive. I'm reading through Roberta's granny's old Read Easy magnifying glass, in my favourite place under the plaque that said, "Silence was golden." And there he is, there is Bernie Henderson. I really love that story because it feels as if we're actually back in a school. It feels all the characters they talk about we could actually be in our class too. And it does make me think about, as a teacher, some of the things that you say just in jest or in a joke or as a fleeting comment, how hurtful it can be. So if I've ever asked you to shush in class, just know that I'd really be grateful to hear your voice right now and be there with you. See you for the next story.